Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to begin our Yom HaShoah Memorial Service with the Jewish War Veterans Honor Guard. Will the Honor Guard please come forward? Marty Ross will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would Rabbi Gordon Geller please come forward?
We remember. Tonight we remember the atrocities committed against our people, We remember. Tonight we remember the atrocities committed against our people, the murder of 6 million men, women, children. We remember the communities, the synagogues, the ideas, the dreams, the vision, the hope and faith that died along with our slaughtered brethren. By remembering, we keep our people alive. By remembering, we demonstrate our resilience as a people. By remembering, we give honor to the victims of the Holocaust. We fulfill one of the highest mitzvot, to care and pray for the dead. By voicing our sadness and anger at the atrocities our innocent brethren endured, we call ourselves and others to action. By voicing our opposition to hatred, we stand against prejudice and anti-Semitism. By acting in memory of those murdered, we begin to heal the brokenness of our world and to create a new beginning. The poem, "Unto Every Person There Is a Name," immortalizes the names of those stripped of their identities and slaughtered, and gives us the opportunity to complete the work of Tikkun Olam.
Shyla Saitik, please come forward.
Unto every person there is a name, bestowed on him by God and given to him by his parents. Unto every person there is a name, accorded him by his stature and type of smile and style of dress. Unto every person there is a name, conferred by the mountains and the walls which surround him. Unto every person there is a name, granted him by fortune's wheel, or that which neighbors call him. Unto every person there is a name, assigned him by his failings or contributed by his yearnings. Unto every person there is a name, given to him by his enemies or by his love. Unto every person there is a name, derived from his celebrations and his occupation. Unto every person there is a name, presented him by the seasons and his blindness. Unto every person there is a name, which he receives from the sea and is given to him by his death.
Will the participants in the candle lighting second generation after the Shoah please come forward? Isabella Mooney, Samantha Bell. Please come forward.
Candles we light wherever we are, candles for Hanukkah, candles for Shabbat, candles for Havdalah, braided like a challah, or candles for pure delight. So many, many candles, all kinds of shapes, all kinds of colors.
All of them candles of joy. Only one candle is right, to remember someone who died. A candle first for the soul, and more candles we light, in silence and in honor. 6 candles, a memorial to the myriads who are gone. 6 million, all of them candles of sorrow.
Three generations ago, history's worst crime was committed, destroying the marvelous Jewish civilization of Europe. A civilization that brought to humanity gifts of science, art, literature, and music. To Jews, sages, scholars, spiritual insight. Women and children, fathers, husbands, wise and foolish, 6 million, whose crime was to draw a breath. In truth, far, far more than 6 million. Unborn children, children's children, future generations, undiscovered medical treatments, symphonies uncomposed, books unwritten. Germany, lying at the heart of the Western world, rich in science and philosophy. How it came to pass that the very mention of Germany brought to mind the very worst evil. To escape German-occupied territories meant life. To remain meant death. A decade ago, a decade after the Second World War, as a military chaplain, I was given a choice. Army meant serving in Germany. Navy meant Japan. Instinctively, I chose Japan. Today, Germany is a vibrant democracy, home to a renewed Jewish community, vital ally of Israel, refuge to those fleeing war, Jewish and non-Jewish. If the Shoah could happen in Germany, where could it not happen? We here memorialize our precious brothers and sisters, no matter when we were born or where, we are survivors.
Would the students from Kulanu School of Jewish Studies please come forward?
As we remember the deaths of our 11 million brothers and sisters, we honor and memorialize them all, Jews and Gentiles and others who were victims, martyrs, and heroes.
We honor those who died because they were Jews. We honor those who died because they helped Jews, those who died because they resisted the Nazis, and those who died because of their ideals and convictions.
We honor those who were tortured, impoverished, dehumanized, deported, enslaved, and murdered. No not Christian, not Jew.
They were murdered while the world was silent. They were murdered while the world pretended not to notice. They were murdered, most, but not all. There were survivors.
There are survivors of the Holocaust. We know them. They are the parents whose children are gone, and they are the children without parents.
We know them. They are the remnants. No brothers, no sisters, no aunts, no uncles, no grandparents, no cousins, no neighbors, no friends.
Dean Gregg will now read the Megillah HaShoah.
For these do I weep, and for the millions crowded in ghettos and in detention camps, for those wandering in forests and those hidden in attics and in the underground bunkers, for those who found refuge in the bosom of another faith or who lost their God, for those who were given over to experiments at the hands of wild beasts called doctors and scientists, for those who died of hunger and of thirst, smothered to death in freight trains or in gas chambers, shot, buried alive, or cremated, for those who were brought out to be killed by hanging so that they would be seen, and for those who sanctified God's name and the name of the people Israel, refusing to be subdued, fighting to the death, for those who lost their homes, their dignity, and their hope, and for those left alive to live the horror anew, day after day, moment after moment. For these do I weep, for infants who never learned to say mommy, for boys and girls whose youth was stolen from them, who withered before coming to blossom, for young men and women who never were blessed beneath the wedding canopy, for the elderly denied the privilege of a gracious old age, for the orchestras and for the music, and for all the world's beauty whose rainbow of colors was lost, replaced by only brown and gray and black. For all these do I weep.
Paul Stern, please come forward.
There was a time I could go up and down them steps without help. Now I'm 96 and I need help. Early in April of 1945, our troops first entered the first concentration camp that they liberated. Not until 1945. What they saw was unbelievable. They had no conception of what they were looking at, couldn't believe it. They sent for General Eisenhower. General Eisenhower at that time was the commander of all troops, American, British, French, everybody, in the ETO, European Theater of Operations. They sent for him to show him. He came, and he wrote this letter. And it was sent to his boss, General George C. Marshall in Washington, who was Chief of Staff. I have never felt able to describe my emotional reactions when I first came face to face with indisputable evidence of Nazi brutality and ruthlessness disregard of every shred of decency. I visited every nook and cranny of the camp because I felt it was my duty to be in a position from then on to testify at first hand about these things in case there ever grew up at home the belief or the assumption that the stories of Nazi brutality never happened. Thank God for President Eisenhower.
Nancy Rubin, please come forward.
Celebrating leadership during the Shoah, the 80th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, Passover evening, April 19th, 1943. 80 years ago, on the evening of April 19th, 1943, the holiday of Passover began. On the same evening of April 19th, 1943, the Jewish prisoners in the Warsaw Ghetto received a warning of a final deportation action to begin. The German troops marched into the Warsaw Ghetto to make it free of Jews. The commander of the Jewish Fighting Organization, ZOB, was Mordecai Analehi, age 24. The ZOB members were mostly young Jewish men and women who were ready to fight and resist the final deportation from the Warsaw Ghetto. To their surprise, when the German troops saw them fighting with a few guns and grenades, the soldiers retreated from the Warsaw Ghetto. Led by Mordecai Analehi, the inexperienced young Jewish fighters of the Warsaw Ghetto fought the German troops for nearly 1 month until the organized resistance could no longer fight. On May 8, 1943, Mordecai and the other staff commanders were surrounded at the ZOB headquarters at Mila 18th Street. They died there, resisting. Tonight, 80 years after the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, we celebrate the leadership of Mordecai and all those who resisted with him in the Warsaw Ghetto. In the months after the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, the news of the resistance spread to other ghettos, concentration camps, and to Jews in hiding. The Warsaw Ghetto gave hope to other Jewish prisoners. 80 years later, look back and remember all those who resisted throughout the Holocaust in Nazi-occupied Europe with courage and hope for tomorrow. Remember the power of the human spirit and Jewish resistance during the Shoah.
Catherine Manhart.
The last, the very last, so richly, brightly, dazzling yellow. Perhaps if the sun's tears would sing against a white stone. Such a yellow is carried lightly way up high. It went away, I'm sure, because it wished to kiss the world goodbye. For 7 weeks I've lived in here, penned up inside this ghetto, but I have found my people here. The dandelions call to me, and the white chestnut candles in the court. Only I never saw another butterfly. That butterfly was the last one. Butterflies don't live in here, in the ghetto.
Cantor Jackie Menaker.
Please rise as you are able.
Medanek sobibor trebelinka uvagetat shelbi alistok Kirakov Lublin Minsk Vilna Warsaw Uvishar Machanot Hashemed Be'Europa Shenegergu Vishanish Chatu Shenis Refu Fishenech Niku Al Kiddush Hashem Bavur Sha'anu מתפללים בעד חזקרת נשמותיהם. אנא בעל הרחמים, הסתירם בסתר כנפיך לעולמים. וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם. Adonai hu, Adonai hu nachalatam. Began Eden tihi minuchatam. Yanuchu בשלום על משכבותיהם ונאמר Amen. O God, full of compassion, who dwells on high, grant perfect rest in your divine presence to all the souls of our holy and pure brethren who died at the hands of the murderers in the camps Auschwitz-Birkenau, Belzec, Bergen-Belsen, Dachau, Majdanek, Mauthausen, Sobibor, Treblinka, and in the ghettos of Bialystok, Krakow, Lodz, Lvov, Lublin, Minsk, Vilna, and Warsaw, and other death camps and ghettos in Europe, who were buried alive, burned, strangled, slaughtered, for the sanctification of your name, and for whose souls we now pray. Master of mercy, envelop them in the shelter of your wings for all eternity. May their souls thus be bound up in the bond of life, so that they may ever rest in peace. Now we all say, Amen.
Rabbi Michael Beshbach, please come forward.
We remember our brothers and sisters who perished because of our inhumanity to one another. We are grief-stricken, recalling those who in their youth and old age were cut down by the vicious hand of evil. We turn to God and to one another for comfort as we mourn and for strength as we persevere. Through the ancient words of the Mourner's Kaddish, sanctifying God's name, we affirm our bond with those whom we have lost. Together, Yitzgadal v'yitkedash shemei rabbah, v'alma divrach kirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agalah uv'izman kariv imru. Amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach le'olam olmei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei t'kudusha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shlam ha'rabah min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'romav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Please be seated.
Welcome to our Yom HaShoah commemoration, and thank you for participating in our Holocaust Remembrance Program, the first live program in several years. I'm Rona Zucker Kaplan, a member of the Sarah and Sam Schofer Holocaust Resource Center Executive Committee at Stockton University. Tonight, Molly Golubkow will tell us about her parents, Harry and Sonia, survivors of the Holocaust. Harry and Sonia lived in New York before moving to Vineland to be chicken farmers. When they could not earn a living selling eggs, they opened a hotel on St. James Place in Atlantic City. Have you ever thought about your parents' pain? Try thinking about it. It hurts. But we're lucky because Molly is willing to share the events of her parents' life, even though it may be painful for her to relive them. L'dor vador, from generation to generation, Molly will tell us how her parents survived. She'll describe her parents' resilience. They left the only world they knew. They traveled to an unknown town in an unknown country. They built lives in Vineland and then Atlantic City. These are the lessons and the legacies of the Shoah. After you hear Molly speak tonight, the responsibility shifts. Molly will have satisfied her responsibility of sharing her story. Then it's your job, because it's your job to tell her story and retell it again to your children and your children's children and to your friends. Tonight, beginning last night through Sunday, the Stockton Channel, which is Channel 9, will be dedicating programming to stories of the Holocaust. The schedule is on the Sam and Sarah Schofer Holocaust Resource Center website, and we do have some programs here if you want to see what will be shown. And now I invite Molly to speak to us.
Thank you, Rona. Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for joining us tonight to reflect on the sobering subject of Yom HaShoah and to remember the 6 million innocent men, women, and children that perished at the hands of the Nazis and their collaborators during the Holocaust. I want to thank Jane Stark and Gail Rosenthal and her staff of the Stockton Holocaust Resource Center for organizing the Yom HaShoah program as you do each year for our community. I'd also like to thank Bethel for hosting. Zachor in Hebrew, Gedenk in Yiddish, remember, to remember. In the words of Elie Wiesel, without memory, there is no culture. Without memory, there would be no civilization, no society, no future. I stand here tonight with so many memories of my parents, Harry and Sonia Golubko. As a child of 2 Holocaust survivors, I clearly remember hearing about the horrors of World War II, even at an early age. In fact, I don't recall ever not hearing about the war. My parents and their friends, other survivors, would meet around our kitchen table on our farm in Vineland, and then here in Atlantic City and Ventnor.
Can everybody hear her?
Yes. Somebody. So, my parents and their friends, other Holocaust survivors, would meet around the kitchen table on our farm in Vineland, New Jersey, and then in Atlantic City and Ventnor when we moved here. They would come over for a meal, a game of cards, or a glace de latte, a cup of tea. And inevitably, the conversation would move from current topics like the children, business, the weather. The topics would always come back to the war. And they would start remembering those who were killed, how they died, how old they would have been if they weren't murdered, and then, of course, stories about the partisans fighting the resistance, or as my parents called them in Yiddish, the Partisanen. I also have vivid memories of attending with my parents and other survivors the annual Heschora program, which is now referred to as Yom HaShoah, the Day of Remembrance. And I realize you cannot see this picture very well. This is a blow-up of a picture from the Violent Times Journal from April 1962. And as you can see, there is a sea of Holocaust survivors commemorating the death of the 6 million. And at the very bottom of this picture, there is a child with curly hair who has her back to the camera looking at her mother, and that child is me. I'm about 5 years old in that picture. So, at a very early age, you can see I witnessed people remembering with tears in their eyes and broken hearts. Every year I sat amongst them. And their sadness and pain was fresh. I was born only 11 years after the war had ended, and scars were still very raw. But in addition to the sadness, I remember how proud and strong the survivors seemed to me when at the end of the program they would all stand up and proudly sing in Yiddish the partisan song, Zog Nikemo. Each year, even into my adulthood, I looked forward to hearing that partisan song and seeing the survivors, because they survived, they prospered, they continued, they reinvented themselves, and they proved those Nazi bastards wrong. I especially felt proud when the survivors sang this line in particular, Das Lied gesungen mit Naganis in der Hand, singing with grenades in our hands, because some of the people in this picture and at other Holocaust gatherings were resistance fighters and fought with grenades in their hands. And you could see the emotion and the pride on their faces. So over the years, I continued to attend Yom HaShoah programs with my parents, standing proudly as we all sang together those powerful lyrics every year until my father passed in 1986. And then I continued with my mother at my side, along with my brother and his family, until she passed only 5 years ago at the age of 98 and a half. Today, I am honored beyond words to speak to you about my parents. I have so much I could say. Now, I know there are Holocaust survivors who kept their stories of how and where they survived. They kept that information to themselves, perhaps too painful, too tragic to share. But my parents were quite the opposite. For example, I am named after my father's first wife, Malke. I knew as a child she was killed in the war, along with my father's entire family, including a young son and daughter. In fact, my father was the only survivor from his entire family. Not even a cousin survived the liquidation of his ghetto in Miori, Poland. As a child, I knew that there were these bad men who were called Nazis. They spoke German, and they had this weird emblem on their uniform called a swastika. I also remember as a child watching TV shows like Combat and Hogan's Heroes and recognizing the swastika on their uniforms and even understanding a few German words because of its closeness to Yiddish, which we spoke in the house. So what makes growing up with Holocaust survivor parents different than other parents? Obviously, to have crawled out of the ashes of World War II no doubt will change who you are and therefore how you will interact with others, whether it's a spouse, children, or friends. That kind of trauma can harden and destroy a soul, and it did in many cases, unfortunately. However, my parents somehow did not become hardened, suspicious, cruel, and honestly, after what they lived through and what they lost, I really don't know where they found the kindness and tolerance they showed towards other people. That is the primary reason I wrote my book, The Hotel on St. James Place, Growing Up Between the Boardwalk and the Holocaust. It was to not only record their story of survival, but to capture their resilience, their adaptability, and their decency towards other people. So my parents, after leaving the chicken farm in Violin in the late 60s, 1960s, as did many other survivors at the time, they moved to the Atlantic City area and got into the real estate and hotel businesses. Now, by the way, did my parents know anything about chickens or chicken farming when they moved to the farm? I see heads, yes. The answer is no. And did my family know anything about hotel management? The answer again is no. And that reminds me of an expression that my father used a lot to sort of explain the situations that Holocaust survivors found themselves in. And in Yiddish, it's Hitler es gewen a modner Schatten. Translated, it's Hitler was a strange matchmaker, because if it wasn't for the war, many of the survivors would have not been married to who they were married, come to this country and find themselves learning new languages and new jobs and professions. So I can still hear my father saying that. Our hotel was on St. James Place. It was the early 1970s, so that was before casino gambling was passed and a little after Atlantic City had lost her popularity. It was a small hotel, and our customers were, let's say, far from 5-star. So picture, if you will, my parents, Holocaust survivors, from a small shtetl in Poland with deep roots in Yiddishkeit, interacting day and night, and I mean day and night, with customers like drag queens, drug dealers, and runaways. Now remember, this is the 1970s. The conversations between my parents and our customers were sometimes funny, sometimes sad, but always memorable. Even as a teenager, I knew these stories were special and had to be written down. So 2 years ago, my tales were published, and my parents' stories hopefully are now recorded forever. The book is dedicated to my parents' memory. Again, we come back to that word, memory. Although not much kindness and tolerance were shown to my parents during the war, they always remained kind to the people in the hotel. Now, did they agree with a man dressing up like a woman or someone who sold drugs for a living? Absolutely not. But they had this special live and let live attitude towards others and a decency to people, especially those who society at that time would have looked down on as others and those people. Somehow, Sonia and Harry Golubko, my parents, found a way to start a new life, a new family in a new world, learning a new language, and immersed in a new culture so foreign from their own, and handle themselves with grace and kindness. And they managed to accomplish all of that without ever forgetting about the Holocaust and those who were taken from them. I hope they know how special they were and how proud I was of them and their resilience to go on. I wish I had said that to them more often. Before I end, I want to ask each of you to do one more thing tonight, in addition to remembering the Holocaust and its survivors. What I ask of you is, from this Yom HaShoah to the next, God willing, I ask that you do something to honor the memory of the Holocaust. Don't just think about it. In Yiddish, it's tu epis. Do something. Don't just remember it passively. So I'm asking you to act on it. We find ourselves today in some very frightening times. Anti-Semitism statistics are off the charts. In fact, New Jersey is number 3 in the most reported cases of anti-Semitism. So we all need to put on our proverbial boxing gloves and get into the ring. So what can we do? Well, there are congressmen, senators, politicians that you may need to contact throughout the year. There are educational programs that may be looking for volunteers in the schools. And there are probably children and grandchildren in your own families, and maybe neighbors, that never heard what really happened, the details of what happened between 1939 and 1945 in Europe. So please accept my assignment. You can tell me next year when we all gather again what you did. You can contact me throughout the year, or you can just keep it to yourself. The point is, tu epis, do something. Again, I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight and allowing me, a child of 2 Holocaust survivors who settled in South Jersey, to share my thoughts and feelings with you. I wish you all a good evening and a year full of gesund and nachas from your families. Thank you.
Rose Vermette, please.
On April 19, 1943, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising began. The ghetto fighters were able to resist for nearly 1 month. News of the resistance traveled to the Vilna Ghetto, where the Vilna poet and underground fighter Hersh Glek wrote the Yiddish song to the existing music by Soviet composer Dmitry Prokras, Zognit Kein Mo. The song became the anthem for the Jewish partisans.
Please rise.
Zognit kein molas, du gehst dem letzten Weg. Pod Himmeln bleiene verstellen blühende. Kommen wird noch unser Reus gebänkte Schau. Es wird erbeugt und unser Trott mir seinen Dom. Kommen wird noch unser Reus gebänkte Schau. Es wird erbeugt und unser Trott mir seinen Dom. Von grünem Palmenland bis weißem Land von Schnee. Wir kommen nun mit unser Feind, mit unser Weg. Und wo gefallen ist der Spritz von unser Blut, sprotzen dort wird unser Pure, unser Mut. Da sag nicht kein Mot, als du gehst dem letzten Weg. Хоть Himmeln bleiene, verstellen blühende. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Schau. Es wird erbeugt und unser Trott mir seinen Dom. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Schau. Es wird erbeugt und unser Trott mir seinen Dom. Mir seinen Dom. Mir seinen Dom. אנחנו פה.
Let's read in English. Never say that you have reached the final road when leaden clouds hide the open sky, because the time we long for will certainly come. Our voice will sound loud. Here we are. From tropical lands to the distant snow-covered plain, we are coming on with suffering and pain. And wherever a drop of our blood was spilled, our strength and power there will spill. Will the individuals participating in the passing of the legacy please come forward? Sylvia Goldstein, Melissa Goldstein, Molly Golubko, and Mike Kleidermacher. And while they are coming forward, I'd like to recognize the survivors that are present with us tonight. I understand Betty Simon is here. Betty? Here. And Sonia Kaplan. Sonia. And there any other survivors here? Who? I don't. Hilda. Okay. Oh, Inga's here? Inga? Inga Fixler. Okay. Very good. Thank you for attending. You want to come forward?
We affirm our commitment to the State of Israel and to furtherance of Jewish life in our homeland.
We shall teach our children to preserve forever that uprooted Jewish spirit which could not be destroyed. We shall tell the world of the depths to which humanity can sink and the heights which were attained even in hell itself. We shall fight anti-Semitism and all forms of racial hatred by our dedication to freedom throughout the world.
We are the first generation born after the darkness. Through our parents' memories, words, and silence, we are linked to that annihilated Jewish existence whose echoes permeate our consciousness. We dedicate this pledge to you, our parents, who suffered and survived, to our grandparents who perished in the flames, to our vanished brothers and sisters, more than 1 million Jewish children so brutally murdered, to all 6 million whose unyielding spiritual and physical resistance, even in the camps and ghettos, exemplifies our people's commitment to life.
We, the living survivors, entrust the legacy of the Shoah to you, our children and grandchildren, and all those who have come after the fire. We want you to know, to vow, that the sacred memory of our suffering and our martyrdom shall never be scorned or erased. We want you to recall the heroism of Jewish resistance. Remember the shining examples of sacrifice and kindness from the righteous Gentiles. Remember the racial prejudice and discrimination that led to the Holocaust. By not forgetting, you will pay tribute to those who were destroyed. By not forgetting, you will ensure for those who live and those who are yet to be born that we intend never to allow such inhumanity to happen again. This is the heritage we, the survivors, entrust to you, your custody, for safekeeping for all generations to come. We accept the obligations of custody.
Rabbi Fishbeck.
Please rise as you are able to do so. A night of remembrance with yet a yearning for a better world, a moment of despair with a hint of hope. It is said that if the entire history of the Jewish people, all the nearly 4,000 years of triumph and tragedy, spirit and struggle, wandering and wondering, all of it, were to be told, were to be written down onto a single sheet of paper, then the past 100 years, indeed events in the living memory of some of us here in this gathering tonight, would warrant 2 full paragraphs. One would be devoted to the kingdom of the night. Another would tell of rebirth on the distant shore of the Mediterranean Sea. We look back and we look ahead. There are 2 core acts of Yom HaShoah, competing or even contradictory commandments, as with Amalek, as with Haman. Remember, we are told, never forget, and also the very act we attempt with groggers and with grit, Yimach Shemo, may the name of the enemy be erased. Blot out the evil. Eloheinu Shebashamayim, eternal God, may we remember those who were lost. May we never forget their lives cut short, the love which animated them, who they would or could have been. Eloheinu Shebashamayim, eternal God, may we wipe out all traces of hate. May we purge the crumbs of the criminals who carried out orders and asked no questions and did not see in the faces of our loved ones the image of the divine or even human beings at all. May we remember. May we never forget what was done. May we erase. May we blot out the damage that it caused. May we remember to stand up for ourselves, and may we never forget to come to the aid of anyone suffering persecution or prejudice, victims of hatred as we once were. May we erase, may we wipe out the impulse to oppress, along with any gain that oppressors sought with their acts. This night may we remember, and this night may we blot out. Never again, not to us and not to anyone. So may it be on a night of remembrance, with a yearning yet for a better world, a moment of despair with a hint of hope.
Candace, please come forward to be our judgment of people.
Please keep your seats. Remain standing for the retiring of the colors. Standing if you're able. Thank you for sharing this evening.